This video will cover series opens and shorts and how they apply to a fuse. Okay, so these circuits I'm going to draw, you're going to see me draw probably 20 times. They look like the most basic thing you could possibly ever do, but we really sometimes it's hard to wrap our head around it. And it's just an open circuit and a closed circuit. And the application is a good fuse or a blown fuse. And I've seen people check fuses and think it's bad when it's not, and think it's good when it's bad. So it's a pretty basic idea, but I'm going to have, and I'm going to draw a switch just to visualize it better. But I've got a resistor, and I've got an open switch, and I've got 10 volts. So I'm going to put a meter across my resistor, a voltmeter, and then I'm going to put a meter across my open switch. So I've got 10 volts available. Is any current flowing with my switch open? No, it won't. Good question, though. Good question. An amp meter would. No, it's open, just like it's drawn. Right, so there's nothing flowing. So, what voltage will I have across that open switch? Well, that's good. If I had a nickel for every time I went over this, I'd be in the Bahamas. So here's my meter. I put it across here, I've got 10 volts. Okay. Well, if I move it to here, I'm going to have 10 volts. I have nothing flowing, so what will I have here? 10 volts. Yep, 10 volts, because an open, they call it the applied voltage. An open will measure the applied voltage. So we have our 10 volts here. And since there's no current flowing, it doesn't really matter what size my resistor is. What voltage will I have here? 0. There's no current. Without current, I can't have voltage mathematically. So now I'll draw the same circuit. Now I'm going to close the switch. So now I have current flowing, and I'll draw in my voltmeters here. Across my closed switch, what voltage will I have? 0 volts. I have 0 ohms of resistance. Even with current flowing, 0 times anything is 0, and I'll have 0 volts. The lab, one of the labs in the next unit will have you do that. Will have you measure the voltage across a piece of wire. And that's very important to understand, that the voltage across a piece of wire is going to be 0 volts. So with current flowing, and I only have one resistor, it doesn't matter what resistance value it is. What voltage will I measure up at the resistor? 10. So these look really basic. So here we have an open. And some people like to memorize the fact, which it's a usable fact. They like to memorize the fact that the voltage across an open is the applied voltage. And that's true. However, if I have an open but I need to know the voltage on my resistor, it's not the applied voltage. It's 0 volts. People also like to memorize the fact, which is a true fact. Here we have a short. They like to memorize the fact that the voltage across a short is 0 volts. And that's a true fact. But sometimes in a circuit with a short, we want to know the voltage at the resistor. Voltage at the resistor is not 0 volts. It's the applied voltage, or whatever voltage is dropping across that resistor. So, real important. I recommend you make a sketch of both of these circuits. And as I mentioned, I have second-year students in their third and fourth semesters, and they have an issue with this because the reason I cover this so well and so often and make sure everyone is understanding it, because I can replace this with a fuse, and I can replace this with a blown fuse. So I'll draw it like this, just to show that it's open. Exact same principles, exact same measurements. I've seen people measure a good fuse and get 0 volts and say that's bad. It should have 10. No, it shouldn't. I've seen people measure a fuse, had 0 volts, and, you know, as an apprentice, you can appreciate the fact that when you're an apprentice, no one listens to you. So when I tell them, oh no, that's a good fuse, and they take that good fuse out, get a brand new fuse out of the box, stick it in, and they get 0 volts across it, and then they say, we're getting bad fuses right from the factory. What's going on around here? It's a good fuse. If the fuse were open, then we would expect to see some voltage on it. So, as I mentioned, make a couple sketches. It's real easy. You know, some mornings I might draw one of these and ask you. And it's real easy to just fall into the wrong mindset. But don't think about memorizing any facts. Understand the circuit. Understand what's going on. You'll be all right. Any questions?